Hello everyone, this is Arisaig coming at you from the Jedi Conclave. Today I'm starting a 5-part mini-series on the Pitfalls as outlined in the Jedi Conclave Doctrine. You can go through the doctrine yourself at the Jedi Conclave Facebook in the notes section for the time being. There are 5 pitfalls that we're going to be going over, but today we're just going to be tackling the first one, which is called over-attachment. So, verbatim, it is, this pitfall can lead to a refusal of discipline, failure to show restraint, halting development, and an inability to accept reality, and as such can impact your ability to serve the Force and those in need. It's pretty straightforward sounding, but really it can go quite in depth. So, over attachment. Now, in the fiction, people will quote this quite often, is Jedi are forbidden from attachment. They say no relationships, no, like they have to be ready to let their friends go. In the Clone Wars series, there's actually a couple moments when Anakin thinks Ahsoka is gone, like maybe dead, or just gone, and he has to learn to let her go, but his attachment to her continues to stifle him. So, what does this really mean for us as Jedi realists and Jedaists? So we don't just say attachment; we say over attachment, because attachments are okay. Like I'm attached to taking care of myself. That's not a bad thing. But if I become overly attached to that idea, it can become very selfish, and I will like just stagnate and just keep going in circles where I become very selfish. And in that effort of taking care of myself, I might not pursue what the Force needs me to do. Okay. So, relationships could become an over attachment, of course, if that relationship comes before what the Force needs. So, like, of course, some people might have draw issue with that. That's fine. Like, it's just something that you should be aware of and how it could affect you in your path. So, over attachment can lead to fear. And as we know, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to the dark side. And we as Jedi try to avoid that particular side as it throws off the balance of the Force. So, so in the idea of over-attachment, what is this fear? The fear is of losing that attachment. Then that fear leads anger at a person, idea, or group that is threatening that attachment. That anger leads to hate, which is hate of that change, and hate leads to suffering, which is holding on to something despite being told how bad it is for you, and trying to continue that habit. So, let's say, for example, let's make an attachment. Sugary drinks, like they're delicious, they're fun once in a while. But you can develop an over-attachment to them. You can begin to overindulge. If somebody says, hey, maybe that's not the greatest thing in the world for you, you might be like, no, I like doing this. I know what I'm doing. That stagnates your growth going forward, as outlined. It shows a refusal of discipline, being like, no, I don't need it, I'm good. A failure to show restraint because you are not restraining yourself when it comes to this sugary beverage. It halts your development. If you have like physical goals that you're trying to reach, those things, such as putting that type of stuff in your body, is not going to help you. And an inability to accept reality. If you continue to drink them at an unhealthy rate, at an over-attached rate, and thinking, oh, but I'm still healthy because I do a couple push-ups once in a while. You're not accepting reality. They're unhealthy for you. And I'm not going to say don't just give up on them altogether. God knows I like having a Pepsi once in a while. But if I have like a 12-pack beside me, I know I'll end up drinking them all in a couple days. So I don't do that because I know how unhealthy that will be for me. And as a result, this sugary beverage can impact your ability to serve the Force because you will pursue this attachment, or because of your stagnation in training, the halting in your development, and your inability to accept reality, you won't hear the call of the Force properly. It takes a quiet mind to hear the Force and a willing mind to listen to it. If you are over attached to something, that's going to have your ear more than the Force is. So some people can also end up developing an identity around this over attachment. You can see this in people that have recently become single. It is a very traumatic event, and sometimes they're, for a very long time, they can revolve around that breakup despite trying to move on. Guilty. So example, I am a Jedi, right? Okay, we're Jedi. Hopefully, if you're watching this, hi, a fellow Jedi. If you're not a fellow Jedi, hi. Feel free to look around on our Facebook page and see what we're about, eh? So I've created an attachment to this identity as a Jedi, and around the idea of being a Jedi. Now, in that that attachment has been healthy for me. At the beginning, at least, it was very healthy for me, but eventually, because of the groups I was in, it became unhealthy for me because I became over-attached to this idea of what I was supposed to be doing there. But that idea wasn't reality. I wasn't accepting the reality of the situation, and as a result, it began to halted my development. It just sent me back, and eventually it like, even to this day, sometimes it still affects how I go forward in things. However, in the past year and a half ish, I've had to learn, because I used to think being a Jedi is being part of the community. If you're not part of the community, are you really a Jedi? That's how my mind used to work, and eventually I had to learn to separate your Jedi, the community. They're nice, they're awesome. There's a lot of really great people there, but you don't need them. Like, I'm not going to cast you guys aside anytime soon, but you don't need them to be a Jedi. You can just be one. And I know that sounds simple, but it took me a while to grasp that. For so long, my idea of being a Jedi was overly attached to being part of the community, and as a result, when I went through this time when I was separated from that community, I had a fear of that separation being permanent. Ended up not being. I ended up joining a bunch of different groups. Anger at those who had shunned me. Hate again at those who had separated me from what I identified with. And then suffering. I had to acknowledge that loss and the painful process of changing that I had to go through over the past year. Because of my overattachment, I suffered fear, and in the end, I had to suffer because I had to completely change how I was going about my train of thought. So, overattachment can lead almost as a form of ignorance. Now, in the Jedi Conclave, we don't use the classical form, code. Yeah, the code. That's the word. The whole passion yet peace, ignorance yet knowledge, emotion yet serenity. We have a different one, and you're free to check it out on the Facebook page. Feel free to drop a like. I'm good at this. So it can add as a form of ignorance, and Jedi, of course, go with knowledge over ignorance. Now, as I said, the Jedi Conclave has a different code, but it still hits the same bells. So it could lead to a stick by your guns mentality, where you could be like, no, I can't. You can refuse to accept reason, spurning those that question your attachments, causing you to double down on that attachment even. We can see this in like unhealthy relationships where they'll be like, oh, but I can change them. Oh, they're not like that all the time. These people are bringing up how this attachment has become unhealthy and how you become over attached to it, and as a result, sometimes they can double down. It has to be worded very delicately, but sometimes if somebody's over attached to something, there's not much you can do about it. They're going to have to go through those stages and then go through suffering to realize, oh, this is bad for me. I should probably not be doing this anymore. So overattachment will often lead to being a ball and chain that drags you down as you struggle to rise. Yes, it sucks to remove safety blankets, of like the safety blanket of what you know, but refusing to accept anything other than that may endanger yourself and the safety that it just doesn't allow for growth. Growth happens in your discomfort zone. And as a result, you have to leave what you know, what you're attached to, and you're able to grow from there. So let's do some examples. Like let's pull through some real life examples. I've already talked about relationships. Sometimes you can go through. Somebody could be like, "Hey, there's a red flag with this person." You might double down on that because you're afraid of leaving that comfort zone. You then go forward, doubling down on it, and you're afraid of what can happen. And then all of a sudden you can become separated from this person. Maybe they've left you, and then you can experience anger at that person, hate even of that person, because you're like just so angry. How dare they rip this attachment away from you? I know this firsthand. I was so angry for so long at a person who, in rightfully, like they're happy. I think, I don't know. I don't talk like I've not talked to them in years, but they wanted to pursue their happiness. And honestly, if they hadn't, I wouldn't be where I am today. And that's a good thing. Like, I guess, like in the end, it sucks. But going into the discomfort zone will push you towards growth, or potential growth at least. Not everybody who goes into a discomfort zone is going to grow. You have to want to grow, which is why you have to be able to recognize over-attachment and be able to say, okay, like it's comfortable to have this attachment, but if I grow overly attached to it, it's going to hold me back, and as a result, I'm not going to enter that discomfort zone because this is comfy. That's not. So I'm just going to stay here in my nice warm blanket because it's so nice and warm. So as a result, Jedi aim to go into that discomfort zone quite regularly so they can grow as Jedi. They can advance their training. They can push themselves mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, professionally, to be able to go beyond and to be able to become better tools for the Force. Now, when I say tools for the Force, the last little bit of the overattachment part of the doctrine is, and as such, it can impact your ability to serve the Force or those in need. Now, personally, I view the Force and people, animals, everything as the Force. So, if example, that sugary drink attachment that I mentioned earlier, I know that I will drink, I will overdrink soft drinks. They're delicious. I don't think many people are going to argue that this fact with me. They're delicious, and sometimes I used to buy like a box of them, and I would just go through them in a couple days. That's not healthy, and I got quite big, and as a result, I wasn't doing very well. And if I'm not feeling very well, I don't want to go out, and if I'm not going out, I'm not going to be able to serve those in need. I know sometimes, when I go out, sometimes I'm just able to help people. Just a couple days ago, a cat came up to me because it couldn't get in its house, and I went and knocked on the door and left, just so the people would come to the door to let the cat in. That's serving the Force in a very subtle way. In retrospect, probably freaked the owners out because they didn't probably see me. So they probably think the cat knocked on the door. That's going to be a fun one for their kids. But whatever. That's like... But yeah, if I decide to overdrink on the soft drinks again, I know I'm gonna end up being lying in my bed, uh, barely able to move because I'm gonna feel bloated and disgusting, and I'm gonna hate myself, um, and then I'm gonna be angry at myself, hate myself, and then I'm gonna suffer. See, it all just keeps coming back around. So yes, that has been over attachment, the first of the 5 pitfalls of the path, as outlined in the Jedi Conclave Doctrine. Um, as I said, you can go over to the Jedi Conclave and go through the doctrine there. It's up in the notes section at the top of the page. There's a couple other things, a couple little like lessons if you wanted to tackle those. Um, we're always open to questions. We're always welcome, happy to help, and you're welcome to be about. So that has been the perspective on pitfalls. Again, this is just my perspective. This is just help get the ball rolling on thoughts. If you're going through our initiate path program, maybe this might help you get to thinking in a different way. Maybe hi, if you're new and you're going through our training. If you've been on this path for ages, this might just seem second nature to you, which is awesome. Sometimes it's nice to hear a second perspective, or a third perspective, or just a perspective you've heard many times, but just in a different way. So, again, I am Arisaig, Knight of the Jedi Conclave, and may the Force continue to guide you.